Magister Dixit. Magister Dixit. Magister Dixit. Magister Dixit.
Welcome to Magister Dixit, a podcast that invites you on a journey into realms of expertise, imagination, and occultism. Delve deep into the minds of those that have dedicated their lives to mastering their crafts, and how having an esoteric or supernatural influence has shaped that path. In each episode, we will engage with magisters, true masters of their respected fields, as they share their unparalleled insights, unconventional knowledge, and their unique perspectives. Venture into the mystical as we converse with filmmakers, musicians, and renowned authors. Listen to their perspectives on their respected disciplines and how being a practitioner of occultism has influenced their craft. Remember, in the realm of knowledge, Magister Dixit, the master has spoken. In this episode, we'll have a discussion with author Don Webb. I'm extremely excited to have the opportunity to speak with him on our flagship podcast. An influential writer of American science fiction and mystery, Don is well known for authoring several books on left-hand path occult philosophy. He was the former high priest of the Temple of Set from 1993 to 2002 and is an authority on the subject. Don has published over 14 books and over 400 other items covering a broad range of topics. Don, tell us about how you began your journey into the world of occultism. How did you become interested in the occult and the esoteric?
Well, I would love to have a deeply scholarly answer for that question, but in fact, growing up, right after elementary school was over, the soap opera Dark Shadows used to come on, and all my friends just run massively home to watch this, and meeting the vampire Barnabas or the witch Angelique. And that really fascinated me for a couple of reasons. One, when Angelique would cast a spell, it was always extremely short, because it's a 30-minute show, right? You got 22 and a half minutes of live airtime. Her spells were always really quick, highly dramatic, and then moved on. And that's a really good style. It's so different than, like, say, a Golden Dawn ceremony that can, literally last hours.
Well, like some of the ones that are like in, some of the Hammer films where, the whole ritual takes so long that the hero actually makes it there in time to save the girl and stop everything because it's such an involved process.
Yeah, and a long car ride's involved. Has to fight through 5 levels of guards. But one of the things that was true about Dark Shadows is the interesting idea that, of course, I don't know why I thought this might be true, but in Dark Shadows, anytime they had a problem, these modern rich people, right? The Collinses all had the money. Mm-hmm. They would have seances. That was just like, it's the thing you do. And so myself and my friends, played at this. And when I would conduct them, I would always get effects when I would call the spirit into the room. And I didn't really know if that was a coincidence, like, it's a noise, or it was a spirit, or, or maybe it was me, right? Kind of telekinesis thing. But I just noticed, hey, that's a phenomena happen when you do this stuff. And I lived in a very Christian southern town, Amarillo, Texas, so I didn't talk to people about that.
Are you born and raised in Texas?
I am. I was born in the city of Amarillo. There's a wonderful documentary about my town called Plutonium Circus, which is on the internet. And I am, through an accident, the only person whose name is mentioned in the entire documentary. Didn't try to set that up, but they were dealing with the effects of building bombs in Amarillo. The biggest industry when I was a kid was a place called Pantex, which was terribly, terribly top secret. So we all knew what it did. It put together plutonium bombs, which they call devices, because we can't say the word bomb. And it was a huge employer, and everyone, knew, would secretly tell you, we're number 2 on the Russians list, and smile like we're really happy about that fact. So when they did the Plutonium Circus documentary, a friend of mine, an acquaintance of mine, let's not be too American about this, Stanley Marshall III was having a party for the 25th anniversary of his sculpture Cadillac Ranch, and had invited several of us to come up and put new graffiti on the sculpture. So I was out there, and these people came up and began interviewing me, and they said, well, who are you? And I say, I'm Don Webb, a science fiction writer. And then in the entire doc, I'm the only person whose name is mentioned. Now, it had really small theater run, but it so happened it was run in a theater across the street from Locus Magazine, which is the trade magazine of science fiction. So that was prominently mentioned, that, science fiction writer mentioned in plutonium documentary. It was a strange thing. It was the first time I had ever had a brush with fame that people actually noticed who I was. That lasted for, maybe 2 weeks, and then, never again. But that changed my perception of a lot of things in the world.
Well, and when did you, how old were you basically when you realized that after the Dark Shadows and playing around with your friends, when did you realize that it was something that you really wanted to take a more serious look at or investigate, and what books could be read, or how you could pursue this endeavor?
One of the things, when I was about 13 or 14, I used to do some sleight of hand magic very badly. And my then sister-in-law, thinking that she was supporting what I was doing, purchased a weight throw deck and gave me. And I had seen the tarot cards, in Dark Shadows. That was where I'd seen the symbols. And I was fascinated with their symbolism, and went out and started reading about that particular deck, which itself was a synthesis of astrology and Kabbalah and Goetia and basically whatever my brother Mathers had laying around his house. And I was very fascinated with the whole notion of predicting, but also influencing the future with an artistic object. And I think probably after that, I never particularly stopped being interested in the esoteric, although I probably most of my life looked for more scholarly, more solid sources.
And how did that influence your wanting to become a science fiction writer, or even an author of occult books?
Well, for the science fiction came first by far, and I have always been interested in what is lying next to consensual reality. We have this world we perceive, we move through, we earn a buck, we pay our taxes, but there's a world just north of that, or just south of that, or some unknown direction.
Like a Rod Serling kind of thing, just beyond the veil, or beyond the curtain lies another world.
Well, Serling had so much to do with the perception of the mysterious in America. It's just astounding. You ask Americans what are the sources of their occultism, and and they'll mention Crowley or Eliphas Levi or something like that. Rod Serling put this idea in our households that there is things going on that you just can't see. And then if you're sensitive to that idea, either in a good or bad way, you discover it is true. You discover that there are things going on in the world that you can access and observe that a lot of your friends can't, or that they can be very frightened by it if they get a result.
And what an impact also the episodes of the Twilight Zones had on American culture. Like, for example, the one in the diner where the one-eyed aliens were, they had landed, but the other type of aliens were there also, and it was like, just not only just the idea of an alien landing, but the fact that there was a competition of aliens landing to take over the planet Earth. It's just like, it was always very good at creating a dynamic that didn't really exist in a lot of other sci-fi at that time.
Well, that episode, has all the virtues of the series as a whole. One of which being it is not done through expensive special effects. There's a cheap special effect of one guy having 3 arms, and there's the one guy has a stupid looking eye glued on his forehead. But the big thing is it happens in a diner. It's not an alien fleet arriving. It's not involving the U.S. government and power being cut off and the day the Earth stood still. It's like the kind of reality that you're in, just slightly enhanced, and that's where Serling was just brilliant. And that's why so many of those episodes people will remember forever, because it's just like seared into their soul.
I think even in high school, we read the one where they had just turned off the lights on the block, and the people started blaming each other. And then they had the two at the end. It's like the 2 aliens sitting in lounge chairs on the hill. It's like, yeah, we don't really have to do much. We'll just, you turn off the power, cut off some communications, and they'll just, they'll attack each other and blame each other.
Yeah, the monsters are due on Maple Street. That was a perfect.
Yes.
Long before the Satanic Panic came, it was a perfect study of how quickly fear and hatred can show up.
That red fear, I guess, coming, at the end of World War II and going into what would be the Cold War.
Yeah. Of course, Serling was, watching this in Hollywood, right, where their careers were ruined by the whisper of the word communism.
Oh yeah, and whether they attended a party or a gathering, and yes, and Jack Parsons took a lot of heat in much in the same way with the federal government.
Well, Parsons has that fascinating moment, right? Because he's someone who is like an occult hero. He was like, I want to find out how the cosmos works, and I'm pushing the physical sciences as far as I can push them. And I'm going to discover what sex is in California and have this little housing commune with different women and see if I can get beyond jealousy. Didn't do so well on that one.
L. Ron Hubbard, even in it's just like surreal.
The whole Hubbard moment is fascinating because he took. Hugh Urban, religious scholar, has written about this. He took so much of some basic Crowley ideas and put them in Scientology. Mainly, of course, was taking Freudianism as he understood it, and then a heaping helping of bad science fiction, and there you got a religion. There's a lot of Scientology takes a lot of heat, but that has to do more with how they make money as opposed to the kind of general goofy aesthetic.
Absolutely. It's almost like he saw what Crowley was doing as the template, kind of, maybe this is how I could, turn this into something that can garner a following.
Early on in his writing, he focuses on the idea of the will and training and what's inhibiting us. It didn't go very far. Once he got that car, he just drove about a half a mile and stopped. But and it was obviously has huge attractiveness. There are just there are several hundreds of thousands of Scientologists in America. Now he was smart enough to file off most of the occultism, so remove the words. Although in one of his books he says, and this is a total lie, my good friend Aleister Crowley said to me, which is I guess through the Ouija board or telepresencing or something, since they were never even on the same side of the Atlantic.
Parsons had spoke of Crowley, but Crowley never had any direct contact with L. Ron.
Yeah, never had direct contact. I mean, and Parsons was, of course, writing experiments.
Didn't Crowley suspect, I forget maybe how he was informed that L. Ron Hubbard was a con man and was taking Parsons, and suggested that maybe Parsons was very gullible for this man?
Oh yeah, he actually wrote a letter saying, this a con is being pulled on you, and you're entering and this is a good thing for any occultist. Crowley, who's not a great humanitarian in terms of like, I'm going to look out for my followers. He wrote saying, you're entering the situation assuming goodwill on the parts of everyone around you. Yes, this guy did show up at a crucial magical moment. That does not mean he is a good person sent by the spirits. It just means something powerful will happen. And I'm pretty sure what's going to be powerful is your money is going to disappear. But I've seen occultists of, for decades who, when they receive some result, they've altered the reality around them. They initially assume that they've done it well and that they're going to get the results they want, not that they have entered the playing field. You stepped on the chessboard. Okay, the next thing is, where's the enemy queen? You need to move. Not, look at me, I'm on the chessboard.
And it becomes a bit of 3D chess at that, huh?
Yeah, or 4D chess.
Back to all of this influencing you. Does your understanding of all of this, does it inform or improve your creative process as a science fiction writer?
I think it does now. Initiation, when it's going on with a lot of intensity, your fiction usually sucks, right? I can look back at stuff I've written and be like, oh yeah, it's really undergoing change there, but this story is not as mysterious. The story doesn't have as much poetry as I would like. There's a throwaway line in Under the Volcano where they talk about a magician who's a writer, and they say that every time he goes up a level, the fiction gets worse. And that actually has some truth, sad to say.
Do you ever feel like that because you have so much of this occult knowledge that maybe it permeates your writing, and then you say like, you feel like it maybe kind of directs the direction that you're going to go with a sci-fi story or something?
Oh, well, of course. And there's two ways that happens. Number one, if you're succeeding in initiation, which means if you are changing the magician yourself, then it will flow out in your relationships, your emotional life, your artistic life, your professional life, hell, the traffic you encounter. And of course, that will change your perception of what you write. But there's also an idea that I have that magic is itself a form of fiction, or fiction is itself a form of magic. I mean, think about reading a novel. You're sitting down, you're creating all these images in your mind, you're letting a series of images and emotions take you somewhere. You may let go some of your inhibitions about you even thinking about something, and then a really good book changes you. If you read, say, Haunting of Hill House by Shirley Jackson, she was thought by all of her neighbors to be a witch. I think they're right. I think that she was deeply in contact with something. Now, Do I think she ever set a spell or wore a weird hat or something? Probably not. But the process is very similar.
Let's discuss your most recent book, How to Become a Modern Magus, a manual for magicians of all schools. Now, like we were talking earlier before we started the interview, you said this is a very significant work of yours, and you're receiving a lot of attention and I guess accolades for this book. Would you like to talk about that a little bit?
Well, yeah, of course, I'm a writer, a huge ego, but the book seems to speak to a lot of people. I think because it has a kind of no-nonsense attitude, but hopefully it is permeated by my sense of humor. And I try to write about the world people are going to live in. Most people do not undergo a traditional magical initiation. You didn't go and you meet an older wizard or a shaman or whatever, and you went through these steps.
The tutelage, yeah.
You know, I mean, I know many practitioners, and I only know one who is a traditional Cree shaman, and she received, the initiation. But we don't do that. You practice magic and you pick up stuff in different orders, and you have all these things going on, and somewhere down the way you make your own synthesis. And so I thought, why not create something of a text that gives people the tools to make a synthesis? Do this, you'll get this result. What you think about it, I ain't going to tell you. But this result, some of these things will be easy for you, some of them will be hard for you. And look at which ones are easy for you, which ones are hard for you. And I wrote, this initiatory manual. I thought, I really thought of my books. I thought my book called Vampires would be the one that would draw the most attention. That was intentionally written to be popular. And its sales have done okay. This book has sold more than any of my other books from inner traditions. People just had a huge fascination.
Do you think magic's getting more of its due? Like you see like a resurgence? There's, I guess I see it permeating a lot in, comic books, and you see in like movies. And I mean, Jack Parsons himself, they had that series that had come out that Ridley Scott had done, The Stranger Angel. And it just seems like a lot of these ideas, even on like a channel like Gaia, just a lot more of people delving into these subjects and making it more available for laymen to come across it, rather than having to. I grew up in New York as a kid, so I mean, the only place I knew to go to was the Magical Child down in Manhattan, and it was this, I lived about an hour from Manhattan. So, we were all like 16, and we'd get in a car and drive, it was this all the way drive down here. Hopefully we had enough money to pay tolls and get to the bookstore and be able to get something. And, you had to know where to go. And now it seems like today with the internet, it's just a couple of clicks away.
Well, there's a huge change in the structuring, and I'll talk about two things there. Historically, magic was removed from Western culture by the Catholic Church. They like saying, hey, we don't like the competition. We don't like the idea in particular that you have access to divine power except through us. And one of the ways the church did this, there's always people talk about the Inquisition or burning, wizards or something. But the biggest thing the church did, and they did it consciously, they left notes, right? About the 4th century AD, they said, we're going to stick to the idea that if you practice magic, you're stupid. This is superstition. This is nonsense. Smart people don't do this. And, and they've repeated that for 1,600 years. So after a while, it catches on. There was a time, if you went back, say, to Alexandria, right? You're in like the 3rd century AD, and you want to meet the best scientists and mathematicians in the world, like Hero is making his steam engine and so forth. They're all occultists. University, that's what smart people did. It was part of being a smart person.
Most astronomers were heretics, I would say, in the eyes of the Catholic Church, because they had, beliefs that maybe, the sun, that the Earth wasn't the center of the universe, and that, perhaps we revolved around the sun. And, was it Galileo? Didn't they lock him up for having beliefs like that?
Well, he was tried by the ecclesiastical court, and the ecclesiastical court said, we can do one of two things. We can kill you, or we want you to say the earth doesn't move.
Recant.
And he was like, oh, give me the document. I will sign it. Now, this may be folklore, of course, but there were people that say as he was walking out of the courtroom, he muttered, "Eper movere," it still moves. And the church, and being what it is, I mean, this is one of those things that's staggering, literally only said in the 20th century officially, Catholics could believe the heliocentric system. Now, every scientist in the world and in that particular community, of course, did believe the heliocentric system, but it wasn't, the papal bull wasn't until like the 60s. And they didn't say the heliocentric system was correct. They just said you're not going to burn in hell for believing it.
Look, you can believe what you want, but
because they lost that particular fight. The other thing you talked about, though, about the internet and availability, it's changing the nature of occult knowledge, because there was that time, particularly based on your economic class and your belief systems of those around you, that the forbidden was the ultimate gateway to the occult. That this is bad stuff. This is, it's going to hurt you. And that required of the seeker to have a certain amount of intestinal fortitude. You have to be like, hey, yeah, I'm going to go ahead and read this. And so you can take a book that's philosophically very simple and look at, say, Anton LaVey's Satanic Bible. That's not, philosophically a deep read. And it's not a long book. You can read it in 2 hours.
Right.
But for so many people, just the fact that they had the balls to go and buy it in a bookstore, not via Amazon, sort of dealing with someone looking at them across the counter and take it home, that was a huge change. Now, the opposite side of that is that now there is so much accessibility. You can find incredibly obscure pieces of folklore, and you can read what really smart people have thought about this. And you can even do a lot of it just by the internet. It just clicks away. So that's going to change the type of magician. Now we're going to see magicians who are better scholars, deeper thinkers, but we're going to see less of the magician that's, the ballsy, crazed neighbor. And that will produce different studies and different effects.
Well, the thing I liked about your modern approach to your book is that with all of the older text, the ancient texts, you had to kind of read, like, it was the lesson was somewhere in there. It wasn't just like in black and white, like face this way, do this, think about this, or visualize this in your mind. And, it was all done in, paraphrasing, or, like you had to know how to sift the knowledge from the text. But with something like your book, I mean, it's basically just like a user's manual right away, up and running. Like, here's how you can practice magic right away. You don't have to read all of these books, and I find that a book like yours kind of really removes the armchair occultist aspect of it and puts it more into, here, try this, you know. And you offer a comprehensive 12-month program that includes, you know, these rituals and spells and exercises. Can you tell us about the program and what it involves?
The things I tried to build up were three areas in particular. Number one, I have an introduction to the idea of elemental magic. This is a deep idea in Western magic. Hippocrates divided the universe into four elements: fire, earth, air, and water. Aristotle popularized the idea. And it gives an idea that physical objects, because of their properties, remind us of spiritual qualities. Sexual attractions like fire, it will get you moving. It can burn you. It can create a spark in a dark area. Sadness is like water. You can look at the physical world and say some aspects of wealth are like earth. You can look at the world of information, the internet world, so that's like air. So using metaphors that are already well programmed into people, I introduce people to elementary magic. And then I say, all right, we're going to try something else. I introduce them to soulcraft. Now, I chose Egyptian soulcraft, not just because I love Egyptian stuff, right? Temple set and so on, but because the Egyptians' model was kept active for about 4,000 years. You know, and so it's like, we keep coming back to this. This is good. And it's very different than what soulcraft we may have as a modern American. As a modern American, we're kind of like, I have a mind, got a heart, I have this vague thing, a spirit, a soul. There's some part of me that's invisible, and I have a body. That's very limited soulcraft. And it does not explain, for example, why you can want to do different things. Or how does your soul affect other souls? Or how can you tune in to work others have done? All of those things are in the Egyptian system, which is a very magical worldview. So I teach people soulcraft, find the parts of yourself. Find them, see how they're working or not working. Some parts, for some people, you will find them instantly. Some parts are going to be very hard. And the last thing I did, the last 3 months of the year, I want to play with perceptions of time. Now, in general, in modern America, in modern Canada, in modern Europe, we have linear time. There's the past, there's the present, there's the future. It only goes in one direction. We are really sure what it means. Various ancient cultures said different things. And so to make it easier on an English speaker, I actually use the time sense of the Anglo-Saxons, because you've been programming yourself with that forever. And what's really startling about English, and this is something when I say this, people are going to not understand. Most languages, if you look at French, you've got present tense, past tense, future tense. English, you have present tense, it's happening now. Past tense, there is no future tense. There's no morphological change. You have to use helper verbs. I will run. And it's because they conceive of time as, first there's weird, there's the time behind us, which is huge, which is powerful, which is a source of all momentum of everything going on. There's what's happening right now, verdande, and then they use a very different sounding word for what we call the future, skuld, which literally means debt. And that's what should happen. It's deep in the verb system of English that the future is not preordained, but that if we act a certain way, it owes us something or we owe it something. And so I let people play with time. They have the elements to play with the stuff outside themselves. They've got soulcraft to play with their parts, and then they put that together in time, because time holds all meaning. Whether it's I want this in the future, whether it's I hold on to this thing in the past, or this thing in the past hurt me, I need to deal with it. And of course, the present, the toughest thing for a magician is finding out what's really going on. Most of the time, we don't know what's really going on. That's why we have 24-hour news services that's just practically telling us all the time, this is happening in your life.
And everybody's addiction to social media, with Twitter being 160 characters.
They have this moment of we are fascinated with the trivia of life, because we also recognize what an amazing thing the trivia of life is. Let's say you're driving on a highway, and because as you're going by through the radio, you hit this really loud song and you jerk your car. A totally trivial thing could end your life. There's always going to be a last moment, which means, on one sense, all human activities are equal, because any activity you're doing, that could be the last activity you do. And so how are you doing it well? Do you know why you're doing it? This is called, in most occult circles, you're usually called something like being awoke, the awakened person. Now, since that also has a meaning in current politics, I don't use that word as much, because then people are like, oh, you're talking about being liberals. No, that's a cool idea. And I can talk about that because, I'm a long-standing liberal. But no, being awake is that process of discovering what's actually going on, instead of what somebody wants us to think is going on. And it's not for something insidious. It's not conspiracy theory. It's not, they're trying to keep something from us. The main things that create our reality, that we're off the media, it's about money. It has nothing to do with what their social program is. It could be incredibly liberal one day if that's making you buy the right brand of Coke and burger, and the next day could be more conservative than the most conservative Republicans, as long as the money's flowing. And that means we spend a lot of time wanting and doing things that aren't truly connected to us, and it causes us great agony.
Life becomes so much a hamster wheel of sleep, work, repeat. And you're working for the weekend, but what are we really doing on the weekend? Taking care of our house, or doing all the things that we couldn't take care of because we were working all week.
Yeah, it's actually, we're maintaining investments, and that's not really, a good use of human life. It's a use we have to do now, because of the structure of society. So I suggest, of course, to magicians, you may want to think about how you can structure your life differently, and magic is a good support for that. Because the easiest thing magic does is direct attention. That's the easiest part of magic.
Well, I definitely, could you talk a little more about that? What are some of the key principles or practices that individuals can learn reading your book?
I think that if you want the quickest, most important things you can do, I will give you a threefold practice. Sure. When you wake up in the morning, try to be very still wherever you are. And it's best if you're not awakened by an alarm clock. Maybe you have to be, but it's best not to be. Become aware of what you dreamed the night before. Just think about that. You don't have to interpret it. You don't have to play, Freud or Jung or Adler. Just, hey, what was that? Because that's several hours of your life. You don't want to just be thrown away. And before you get out of bed, tell yourself, I am, and whatever your name is, your magical name, it can be your title that day. I am CEO, if that's where you're working that day, and some intention of what you want to do. As you get up, when you get near the middle point of your day, break from what you're doing walk away, and maybe it just means you go to the bathroom at work. Take a few deep breaths to relax and say, am I achieving my goals? And not am I achieving the goals of my boss or my brother-in-law or whoever. And then at the end of the day, take a moment to close your eyes, visualize as much of your day as you can. And then as you go to sleep, use some kind of sleep-taking phrase out loud, quietly saying, I am, whatever your name is for the dream world, and tonight I want magical dreams. Easy way to start. You can eventually learn to make dreams what you want them to be. If nothing else, it's very, very entertaining, right? Nothing is better than sex dreams or flying dreams.
To say it's such a streamlined example of so many other magical processes, you know, where you're supposed to get up a couple hours, like an hour before in the morning and meditate. And like, I just see like your version of it as kind of for somebody who, you know, maybe isn't up to that level yet. You could just sit there and be quiet and kind of have this moment, you know, instead of an hour of meditation before you go about your day. Definitely, when talking about the hamster wheel and everybody driven, I think, you know, it definitely takes a dedication for somebody to get up an hour early to involve themselves in their magical process, you know. And I think that what you just described is a nice way to maybe ease into a process like that.
Well, one of the problems that exists in most introductory occult books is they assume a high level of disciplined will, that you have a lot of spare time, that you have a household that's completely set up by you. You have no children, no spouse, no obligations that way. But that's not where anyone is starting magical practice. No one starts magical practice because they have a lot of money. You know, they have a lot of money because they do pretty well in society. It's not like, I think I'll start magic. Magic is started by people with need. Some of the needs are spiritual. I need to know who I am. I want to have courage facing death. Some of the needs are practical. I need to get more money. I need to get, romance or sex in my life. And I think it's better to start with the practice that people are going to actually do rather than saying, here's what you may be wanting to do 6 years into your practice.
Right.
Because that's not going to last a week. And then you have that other thing, I must be weak. I didn't do this. Everyone else that read this book did this thing. And that works well for the occult industry because the occult industry generally thrives on people that are dissatisfied with themselves, but think that they're the problem, as opposed to I'm dissatisfied with myself, but assume I am the solution. I don't know how I'm the solution yet, but I know that I am carrying the medicine for my life in my hands now. And that's a different model. The occult world is largely about people who know or are told that they're fuck ups in an exotic way, not the standard, way to be a fuck up. And then are also sold, but if you buy this book, or if you buy this book and this tarot set and these toys, you will be less of a fuck up. No, you'll just have have those things. You could probably have a magical system that's even cheaper to use than mine, because I recommend in the course of a year buying 12 items, one a month, which you may already own. That's things which are symbolic of what you did that month. But you could even have probably a cheaper system than that. There was a variant form of Thelema called the Great Brotherhood of God that came out in the Depression. And for altar and ritual settings, I think you had to buy 4 pieces of cloth and a candle. I mean, it was made for somebody who was in the soup lines. And people got good results, right? Because they had desire, which is number one thing. And then they had some idea of this will work, and here's what results will look like.
Yeah, and the thing is that also your book is a departure from that Golden Dawn type structure of introduction to magic that so many of us were introduced to. That's basically what I was introduced to. It's like you start to research and you find out what Crowley's associations were and where Western esoteric beliefs came from, and you start to talk about Mathers McGregor and his wife, and and Wade, and and everybody's always so worried about a lineage. And is this the right magic that I should be following? And I think that what's so refreshing about your book is that it's not rooted in any of that lineage or anything. I mean, the Egyptian lineage, but it doesn't really deal with that discovery in the late 1900s of Western esotericism and how to practice
it. Well, here's the secret about lineage. If you are pursuing the correct path for you, and you need to meet these people, they literally will appear in your life at the right time. And that's an absolute sign you're on the correct path. I could give a couple of personal examples of that.
Sure.
And this is how I wound up in the Temple of Set, of all places. Some years ago, 1989 to be precise, I received an invitation to write a short story for a collection of stories that were going to be about the Salem witch trials. Book never got made before he went out and looked for it, sadly. But this guy he called me up. He said, "Hey, I like your stuff. Do you know anything about the Salem witch trials?" And of course, I said, "Yes, I'm an expert." Not expert, right? Go down to the physical library in those days, bought all the books, read them, and I made a little chart of the panic, how it got worse and how you've been shed things like spectral evidence, dreams were okay in court. Made this chart, I laid it down. And of course, this was the month of October, right, when Americans are spooky, for money. And I turned on the TV to reward myself, and there it was, Geraldo Rivera, Satanism in America special. And I looked at these people, and I thought, my God, what a group of losers. There were 2 Satanists. One was this guy with crazy ass eyebrows, and then there was a girl who was Anton LaVey's daughter, and I knew who Anton was. And this should be the freak show on this side of the stage. But the evangelists on the other side of the stage were deeply freakier and stupider. And I was listening to this, and I started listening to what the evangelists were saying, and how they figured out things. We see from dreams this, and it's people taking care of children, all of the things. So I pick up my chart and I just start marking it off. And I'm like, wow, 300 years have gone by and we're exactly in the same place. And then this moment happens where this one investigator, guy named Don Webb, says, "Geraldo, you would not believe how much blood these people use in their rituals. Buckets and buckets of blood. But I know the name of every Satanist in America." And at that moment, Dr. Aquino, whom I did not call Dr. Aquino these days, just a guy in a military uniform, said, "Well, then isn't that your job as a policeman to arrest those people?" A completely logical statement if there was any truth. Like I said, and then the guy starts sputtering, and Geraldo cuts to commercial. And I think this is hilarious. I think that this guy, it's like Herman Munster just made this man, totally owned him with one remark. So I had been lax in my magical practice for a couple of years. I'd reached a point where I literally told myself, I've learned everything I can on my own, and there isn't anybody to teach me. So whatever I know is good, but there's not going to be that moment. Anyway, the next night I am at a friend's house, and I just start going off on the Geraldo special. I said, I don't know who this Aquino guy is, but if I could send him a fucking fan letter, I would. That was one of the great moments of TV. One of my friends just starts giving me like the biggest stink eye. And I thought, oh, great, I've offended her. And she walks over to me at the end of the evening and says, you need to drive me home. Okay, so I'm expecting I'm going to get some kind of lecture about this being dangerous. So I get in the car, I start the car. She says, are you serious about wanting to write Dr. Aquino a letter? Doctor? You didn't say Lieutenant Colonel. We've been saying Lieutenant Colonel all night. Why didn't you say doctor? Is he really a doctor? I said, yeah. And she said, well, I'll be seeing him in 2 weeks at the International Conclave of the Temple of Set, and I could deliver it. And it was a life-changing moment because this woman had a real job, and her husband had a real job and was a professor at a university and had written a lot of books and was super smart, and I knew him. And I was like, these are real people in this organization. So I tried to find out what I could about the temple, which was very little in those days, and I wrote the letter, and eventually Aquino wrote back. And at the end of the letter, I said, I've never understood how a group can help you with individuality. Because I'm figuring I don't want to give these guys any kind of opening to my life. And he wrote back saying, well, maybe you should join and explain it to us because it's really hard for us to understand. And I thought that was such an off-the-cuff, silly remark. I went ahead and joined. And 7 years later, I was the high priest. So, I figured out some of the things that were bugging me.
And you were the high priest for what, about a decade, was it?
It was about like 6 or 7 years. As soon as I could find some other sucker, as soon as another initiative presented herself.
What was it? Was it Xena that came back into the fold?
Well, we had our little moment with Xena. Xena came back, and many people have a lot of opinions about that. It was a very short period. I think. I like her. I think that she and her then husband, Nick Schreck, are theologically wrong on something, but I like her as a human. But it was my profound impression that nobody let her be who she was. Everybody was, tell me about your childhood growing up in the Church of Satan and being baptized at 3 and media this and blah, 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 that. I don't think she could get to be herself. So she was actually high priest for 6 years. The person that later succeeded her, with Pat Hardy, was a tremendous high priest, and she was high priest for 9 years, and literally just one of the smartest people I know. Really, really like that.
What were some of the most significant challenges you had as being the high priest of the Temple of Set and running like an esoteric organization of that size?
The temple was undergoing during my high priesthood a lot of change, because I looked at the temple and I saw we had a young membership that was having about 50% turnover. People would stay a few years, they were gone. I've learned my lesson. I thought we need to be structured so people can spend a lifetime here, and working out ways to do that, where people could specialize in their magic and discover their real life challenges. I would say was the best thing I did as high priest. It was helpful because the temple was changing from sort of a modern occult organization, in other words, driven by very popular literature, books that are very thin and usually had a, quarter moon on their colophon, to a deeper level. And that was all because of my mentor, Stephen Flowers, who brought a huge level of scholarship and said, if this stuff is hard and this stuff is forbidden, you got to look to find out why it's forbidden and what it is. And of course, his own specialty, most of his books are about runes. And he has a PhD in medieval German history. He speaks very well about 10 languages and knows about 20. He was like, this is a guy with a big brain that also is willing to look at anything from spell casting to S&M as a magical form. And so one of my biggest challenges was getting people to be like, you need to do your own research. You need to think more about this. Now, because as a Thedian, you got to practice what you preach. At that time, when I first joined, I was a college dropout. So among the first things I did was, go back and get my bachelor's. And I've noticed that now the rule in the temple is that Thedians are college educated, whereas when I first became high priest, as is common for most what's called new religious movements, most of the people tended to either not have college education and had training from a trade school. So that was some of the hugest change, and this is continued even more so. In fact, one of the most biggest groups of the temple is the Guild of University Students, which supports people in their university endeavors, founded by a magician I was so impressed with. I married her. Those are my big challenges outside. The challenge is working with the public when you're dealing with particularly a group with a dark reputation. You have to be very wary of what they want to do. And had I wanted to, I could have had any number of media appearances, but I realized how bad that would be for me and for the temple. Here's an example.
Looking to portray you in a dark manner, or try to hitch their wagons back to that satanic panic controversy that Dr. Aquino and the temple has kind of incurred, unfounded allegations that, did I actually read he had gotten everything reinstated in the Army, his pension and everything like that?
When he retired, he retired with an honorable discharge, chest full of medals. One of the things that happened to him during this is that one senator, conservative senator named Jesse Helms, made a personal quest to ruin his life. And Dr. Reno and Lilith, they did what they needed to do to repair their reputation and to remove unsubstantiated rumors. But rumors always will live on. Nothing has the power as a rumor.
Yeah, I just think back to your little graph that you talked about over 300 years, and it still perpetuating itself. And there it is. Proof again.
Yeah, we're about to have another satanic panic. I don't think the temple will be the object of it, partially because of our reputation as being smart and therefore dull in some way. But that is certainly, there's a lot of moral panic in America right now, and people want to figure out what the problems are with the education system or gun violence, and so therefore it must be drag queens.
Well, but that also kind of leads to maybe a question. What do you think of the the Satanic Temple, which is pretty much more, I would say, a political advocacy group or whatever.
I love those guys, not because of their theology, but because they are really good political performance artists, and they really understand how to get under people's skin.
Do you think that that's a driving force in this satanic panic morality crisis that people are suffering from?
What I think will happen is those guys are painting targets on their back, thinking that nobody is stupid to go shooting them again, and I think they may be sadly surprised on that matter. It is interesting that one of the uses of the figure of Satan is to deal with political and psychological paranoia. What are we scared of? In a way that you're not going to do if you say, I worship Gaia, I worship the Earth Mother. Well, people may think you're fluffy or whatever. Whereas actually, if you're worshiping the Earth Mother, she's freaking terrifying, right? She kills she's gonna kill every living creature sometime and eat them.
Or it reminds me of those Heaven's Gate people. You look at them and you say, oh, they look so harmless. And then, you find out what they all became androgynous and had their I don't know, did they get castrated and stuff?
Yeah,
and then they all did a mass suicide, to get beamed up to the mothership.
But the thing that when that happened, I remember with notice, because of course everyone was just totally condemning them, right? There was just newspapers and TV and totally, these guys are crazy, and it's this UFO cult, and how terrible. And they interviewed Nicole Nichols. Now, Nicole Nichols, as you may know her as Lieutenant Uhura in the original Star Trek series. Nicole's brother was a member.
I did not know that. Interesting.
There was really a terrible, interviewer of the, pop up and stick the mic in the face kind of approach. She's leaving her car, and this man rushes up to her, and the dynamics look really scary. He's like this big man. He's menacing this woman with a large phallic object. The optics were awful, and they were asking, "What do you think about this? What can you say about this cult?" And she looked straight at the guy and said, "My brother lived and died happy. How are you doing?" And although obviously everything, cultically they stood for, I find abhorrent, that was a moment of moral clarity. And who knew, that Lieutenant Uhura was going to give it to us.
Yeah, had no idea. I didn't even know that her brother was in the Heaven's Gate cult.
Oh, and it was, there was some really ugly media of that where they dug up pictures of her, particularly from the episode of Star Trek called Mirror, Mirror, when she goes to the parallel evil dimension where women have bare midriffs. And
the men all have goatees.
They all have, that was the kind of talk. And so there were pictures of her, looking sexy, and then there would be something about Heaven's Gate over on the side. It was really ugly.
It was a hit job, right? To basically just jump out and surprise her and try to elicit some type of
I'm assuming they were hoping for tears or anger or not self-control. But small suicidal cults are always themselves dealing with mass psychology. They're just plugging into the bad side of it. An initiate of the left-hand path, initiative, a magical initiative of any kind, should be drawing away from mass psychology, because mass psychology is programming we don't want. And we want to find out how much programming we put in our heads that we created. I mean, it's astonishing the amount of space in my head that someone else owns. I can hear the musical theme for McDonald's, ba-da-ba-ba-ba, and immediately see, right, the cup of coffee and the burrito that I like, and think,
like Pavlov's dog, that you've been conditioned that,
And I'm like, I think of myself as, I won't say enlightened, because that's kind of a ballsy thing to say, but I try to think of myself that I'm more awake and more in control of my mind than the average person. But wow, McDonald's Corporation owns and is not paying rent, as far as I can tell, part of my brain.
And I think the same could be said for a lot of people who are just obsessed with American politics these days. Just it takes up a lot of space in their heads every day. Like what today's headlines are, or, it just seems like they're almost addicted to the drama of all of it.
Well, I mean, psychologically, that's vampirism. It's very low grade vampire magic, so don't think that that's high grade stuff. But if you set up that people feed you and you want to be fed attention, that's vampiric magic. And it doesn't matter who does it, whether it's Billy Graham or Adolf Hitler. Now, what they may do with the message is going to be really different.
Right.
Trump is a huge vampire. He's a vampire. He's an epic vampire. He loves attention, and I don't think he does much with it, which is probably a good thing. He's not a Hitler. He's just like, pay attention to me. You love me. We love you. And and the vampiric exchange, both sides get something. The people that love him get this figure that they think, this guy protects me and loves me and he cares. In some way, he and I are the same.
And what person couldn't feed off of all of that energy being given to them,
Well, I mean, even just as primates, we actually have structures in our brain that are made for that. That was part of what got humans being human, just as much as learning how to nap flint or build fire.
And communication, I think, was meant to be conducted really in person, and not so much through texting and social media. So I think a lot gets lost. I think maybe our primate brains don't really know what to do with that information, because you're not standing in front of me calling me an asshole. You're just this, this character with an emoji or whatever, telling me that, I'm an asshole for believing whatever I'm believing.
Well, there's so much, media totally runs people's lives, and it's fun. I'm not going to say that's bad. Remember, I said I became an occultist because of Dark Shadows. Media can do anything. I remember a few years ago when Cassandra Peterson came out. She plays the character of Elvira. Mm-hmm. Right, and she mentioned that she was a lesbian and had been living in like a 20-year stable marriage. And I remember the next day, I saw this guy that I know who, huge portly guy. He never quite covered his large stomach with his bad T-shirts. He smelled of cheap tobacco, and he's like, oh, "This is terrible. I always thought I would get with her." And I thought, yeah, man, you were just that close. That's the only thing keeping you from it. But the sad thing is, at some level, he did live for this. What kind of afterlife is this guy going to have? Because what he's learned is, I can't get what I want. And that's not the message you want deeply in your soul when eternity comes calling, because you don't need an eternity of that.
Kind of almost like a Sisyphus type situation.
I want this thing, I can't get it, and it's somehow unfair. I mean, he was deeply angry at Cassandra Peterson for being a lesbian, like she had chosen this to thwart him.
It was his only chance.
Yeah, that was it. And even thinking that you would say, even if you said that, what does it mean you would say that to another human because you look so stupid? That's like saying, I think Batman's a real guy. Doubt those people are out there.
Don, what are you currently working on? Can you give us a sneak preview? Is another book in the works? What's rattling in your head?
My biggest work right now is I'm going to write for Inner Traditions a book about the Templar sect. I'd always had that as a project I was going to do in the future, right? At some unknown time. And earlier this year, I had a big heart attack. And one of the things that occurred to me is, the future may be this month. Maybe you shouldn't have your life, this great work setting to do in your 80s, because you may not be here in your 80s. So that, in response to my own mortality, that's what I'm working on.
Will it be a comprehensive history of, or is it just going to focus around your time in the Temple of Set? Or
it's going to be history. It's going to be, here are techniques. It's going to be, how did these techniques evolve? I think that Setianism is always going to be a religion for the few. It's a religion that is in some ways elitist, but I think that a lot of its ideas are usable by a lot of people. And I think that probably it's also interesting enough that a lot of people will read it. Although historically, I generally don't figure out which of my books are going to do well and which of them aren't.
Well, you've written over 400 books, is it? I think.
Oh, I've written over 400 short stories. I've written 25 books.
Wow.
And and some of them have incredibly small distribution. I mean, I have 2 small volumes of poetry. One of the poetry volumes had a press run of 30. And for a moment it was like it wouldn't sell out. Man, that was crushing. But I've written a ton of stuff. I've written a lot of, certainly science fiction and horror short fiction. I teach writing the horror novel at UCLA.
Wow.
We're doing a popular course there, Extension. We're doing a popular course there for about 13 years. And so there are some new horror writers out there that, I'm the guy that showed them the ropes. But I think that it's important to keep the sense of wonder alive, whether in a really, here's how you do it thing, like How to Be a Modern Magus, or if it's something like these stories may enchant you. Go out and read my book, Building Strange Temples. You're going to love these. Or if not, well, you paid the money for it. I think there's a priesthood of wonder in the world. And it calls people that look as different as, say, me and, Texas best writer, a guy named Joe Lansdale, to Stephen King, to all the great makers of movies, so many musicians, like Robert Fripp, Brian Eno. These are priests of wonder who celebrate wonder and then say it's important to give wonder to others. This is the holy exchange. And I think that's the actual basis of religion in the human psyche. I think if whatever your religion is, if it's not filling you with wonder, it is not working. You chose the wrong one. Now, maybe what will work for you, would bore the living crap out of me, but, good for you if you found something that causes wonder.
Right.
So I've got friends of any numbers of religions. I have friends of Asatru. I have friends that are Zoroastrians. I have one person's indigenous shaman, as well as, Christians, Buddhists, Jews, Setians, Satanists, Thelemites. And the thing that I think most of them have in common is a huge sense of wonder. And wonder is the center part of what they're doing. And that's why I do things like love October, because it's such a month of wonder.
It is. It's fantastic. Like, I'm here in Western Pennsylvania, just outside Pittsburgh. So it's, the land of George Romero, and but some of the most awesome haunted houses and like corn mazes, and it's just a really great time of the year here. You have that October sky, and it's like the perfect setting for Halloween, and scary stories, and
I've always enjoyed the fact that of course, Romero is a genius. And when he began his work as a cameraman, his boss really promoted him and said, hey, you need to go, go chase your dreams. And I've always loved the fact his boss was Fred Rogers.
Yeah, isn't that so? That's incredible. Yes.
And that's a perfect example of what I mean, that they're both priests of wonder. And Fred Rogers, it's maybe going to the town of imagination, and
that is a really good example of what you were just talking about. I think absolutely, that somebody that Fred Rogers, to think that he had that type of impact on George Romero, but it's true. It's absolutely true. On another note, I've also been told that you're known for your culinary expertise.
I don't know where that came from. I have published some recipes, and I'm hoping my wife does not.
Does she make you cook all the time, or?
Oh, no, she forbids me to cook. I'm a bad cook. I'm really awful. When I saw that, I thought, oh my God, I don't know where that came from. I have. In some of my works, in some of the murder mysteries, I have had recipes. And I had recipes in the one cookbook, the Temple Set, tried to issue once, which was a tremendous economic failure. But I do think that cooking is a form of magic. And I am very lucky in that I know several people that are really, really good at it.
Yeah, a good meal is definitely magical.
Because it's a matter of, it has everything. It has intention, it has folklore, it has a focused time to do things. It has several dimensions beyond just I am sticking calories in my,
It can have love in it, when it's, when your mother's making, the house's, the family's favorite meal, it has that, all of that love and intent in it as well.
Oh, yeah, I thoroughly believe my grandmother's chicken and dumplings had medicinal properties. I certainly, when I was courting my wife, found eating her lasagna was an incredible turn on. If you told me it has some secret, erotic spice, I would have believed it.
Men and food, it's like, it's the way to a man's heart. It's through his stomach, right?
Right.
Now, the other thing I wanted to ask you about, which I hope that you probably have a lot more expertise in, is your background in fireworks. How'd you become involved in that?
I did professional pyrotechnics for 11 years, and
11 years. Wow.
Well, I mean, it's not that much, employment, because all I did was like load cannon. So, you do that maybe one night a year or two. It's not really like a profession at that level. But it's an example of, if you have intention for things being interesting in your life, and you're open when it knocks, which is oftentimes a very inconvenient time, you can have really great experiences. And one of the first things I did when I moved to Austin is I did a magical working, not for fame, not for money. I said, I want to meet interesting people. And it was tremendously successful. And I did have a friend who runs his own fireworks, Haggard Brothers Pyrotechnics. And one day he called up and said, hey, our loader is not available tonight. You want to come load cannon at a fireworks store? And I said, no, I'm kidding. I would pay to do that. So, I got to go and, risk my life, like $75 a night on July 4th.
That's great.
It's an amazing phenomena. The whole culture is, there's an entire pyrotechnics, subculture that is goofy and mystical as any occult group you're going to meet.
It's like I totally think of a Jack Parsons thing when you talk about making like fireworks and talk about intent and everything,
Well, in fact, pyrotechnicians of a high grade, they have a couple of times a year, they have funerary shoots. And what a funerary shoot is that after you were dead, you're cremated, your ashes are given to a brother pyrotechnician. He makes you into a shell. And a really beautiful shell. And then they announced at a funeral, this is, John Simpson, and he,
I love it.
800 feet this guy.
That's so Hunter Thompson. Did they shoot his ashes out of a cannon too?
They did. Hunter was really interesting. I had some interactions with him.
Really?
Because I was trying to interview him for a magazine I work for called Fringeware. And he was one of those people that's very colorful that I would not want to have in my life. He was a complete asshole, but 100% of it, he would tell you, like the first conversation was like, you're going to be really mad at me, kid, before we're done. I'm like, I'm pretty easy going. No, you'll be mad. And he would of course miss interviews or tell me stories. It's like, but now you can't mention that because George Bush will kill you. And some of the things he told me, I was kind of like, he might be right. I don't think that's going in a posthumous memoir, but that's not going to go out of my mouth. And he was altered every day. I mean, he just did epic amounts of drugs. And if you ask him like what's going on, he would start telling you, and it took a while to say, well, I dropped some acid, about 4:00, and I finished half this bottle of Jack. So I smoked a couple of numbers, take the edge off, but then I got sleepy and snorted some speed. So I'm not doing much today. Yeah, it's like, how are you walking and breathing?
Where the Buffalo Roam was just on the other night, like on Tubi or something, and I had to sit down and just watch the rest of it, because everybody always thinks of Fear and Loathing, but Peter Boyle is just fantastic in that movie as the attorney.
Well, Hunter is a perfect example of somebody who I certainly would not call him an occultist, but he had the occult experience of seeing that a lot of the world is a lie. And that you could do a lot of things in the world that everyone would say, no, you can't do that.
Yeah, that kind of behind the veil, like we talked about in the beginning, saw an aspect of the world that most people do not see.
And remain relatively sane. There are a lot of people in the world that they see whatever, I don't care how it starts for, researching the Kennedy assassination, and then they start to see, wow, things are not what they add up to be. And that's really scary for us as humans.
Magic bullet theory, or is that what you're kind of talking about? Or?
Well, they start with whatever, but then they reach this point of, the world's being run by idiots using totally random rules. They're not even doing it for themselves. That's a scary thing.
Yeah.
One of the scariest things as an adult is discovering that yes, there are conspiracies, but they're run by idiots. And even though we all see them, we don't know what they're doing. Here's my favorite conspiracy. I would say, did you know? In America, there is a well-funded program that exists entirely to make sure that multimillionaires with large IQs and good education mate. The people are like, no, you're making that. I'm like, yeah, it's got all kinds of weird names like Princeton and Yale and Harvard. And then people say, well, that's not a, okay, well, you're right. They have to have a lot of money to go there and they have to be really smart. And as college, you're going to, well, God, are they doing it for a reason? And I said, no one I think has ever stopped and said, this is, maybe it's to make a certain economic leaderly class in America if they thought it through. Everybody sees the conspiracy. It has billboards, it has advertisement, it has books about it. But then people are like, I'd rather look for snake people that are running the world through Queen Elizabeth.
The David Icke's type of theories.
I did publicly write at one point that I was a minor leader of the reptile people. And so I rebutted that on the internet saying, I am not a minor leader of the reptile people. Because that's exactly the utterance, right, that they wanted.
That's exactly what they want.
Laughing it out, and they're like, he's,
or your eyes blinked real quick, like the opposite way or something. Like V.
Oh, yeah. Well, God, isn't that amazing? Like, there was actually like a popular TV show that this guy says, this is reality. And people are like, hey, I think you're right. That was why it went off the air, because they didn't want us to watch it. Bad writing and low ratings. But the ability to believe bullshit is amazing. And it's a magical ability. For the magician, you're wanting to believe that what I'm doing with this wand and this knife is affecting other humans. For the conspiracy theory person, they're like, people are doing that, but they're affecting me. Same idea.
In reverse, yes.
Yeah, one leads to power, and then hopefully you can still keep what reality is. One removes power and will pay you off more if you let reality go away.
That's great. Don, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy day to spend time with me on my podcast. Very much enjoyed speaking with you. And how can everybody find out? I know we can go on Amazon to buy your books, but is there any other websites you'd like to direct us to or recommend?
I'm not doing very much publicity-wise now, other than, I'm kind of a Facebook whore. But, I would say, if you're interested in this stuff, How to Be a Modern Magus. If you're interested in the darker side of stuff, get Uncle Setnock's Essential Guide to the Left-Hand Path, because everyone tells me that was the book that worked for them. And if you like kind of the Lovecraft scary stuff, Building Strange Temples got good reviews. So, it's going to be a couple of years before I put out another book of fiction. I'll probably do a collection, and then I'm going to write a horror novel. But those things are down the pike, if my incarnation continues.
We'll be looking for that Temple of Set book as well.
And of course, when it comes out, I'll be sure and let you know, and hopefully we'll come back and talk to people about it.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for recommending Dr. Flowers too. I'm hoping to have an opportunity to interview him as well.
I think that you'll find him really, he's amazingly funny. In addition to the fact that he's just so deeply knowledgeable. And certainly my good luck of meeting him changed my life entirely. And he was actually meeting a person with a lineage. At the moment, I had already done, about 10 or 15 years worth of work. And then I was able to I can use this right now. It's exactly the time to pick up this tool. And it would go on the other way if I said, I'm going to go find someone and based on their credentials, follow them. Because I would have never awakened. All right. Well, have a great night and a great weekend.
You too. Thank you so much. Take care. We'll see you.
Bye-bye.
Take care.